Every once in a while I feel like I've got everything going on. I feel like my brain's firing on all cylinders and I can achieve anything. I feel so smart, so very smart. And then I try to get out of the car with my seatbelt still on. Greetings, fellow Earth babies, and welcome to Post-Punk Heartstrings, where we try to marry up the raw honesty of post-punk music with life experiences. Sometime in the spring of 1988, I was sitting in my 1979 brown Mustang in the driveway that ran behind my parents' home. In my hand, I held a copy of the very first full-length release that I had ever purchased through the mail. It seemed that the band The Choir had been on the verge of something uniquely special with their previous release, Diamonds and Rain. And so when I heard that their new album, Chase the Kangaroo, would be soon coming out, I mailed a check, an actual check, for a pre-release order to one of the mail-order Christian bookstores that carried a few alternative Christian bands. And then I patiently waited. I still remember excitedly ripping open the manila envelope that the cassette arrived in. I popped it in, and as soon as the opening drum roll and teasing guitar notes of the first track, Consider, assaulted my ears, I was mesmerized. When the marriage of the bass, guitar, and drums blasted onto the scene, I was carried along on the droning, tornadic gyrations into the most reflective and honest lyrics I had heard in my then 18 years. The repetition of reflective and seemingly contradictory thoughts caused reflection on the reality of the ups and downs of life and sparked me into deeper reflection and awe of human existence. There were others like me, after all, people who understood the constant battle of love and fear, laughter and tears, and were willing to admit that openly. This is the music that I had been waiting for, and I hadn't even realized it. Also not realized at the time was the impact that the music of The Choir and the interactions I would have with the band members would have on me for the rest of my life.
It's time to check out Consider by The Choir.
The music of The Choir came into my life during some very intense and formative years. I attended a relatively fundamental Christian high school, and when I graduated, I was clueless as to what I should do next. Most of my friends were making plans to go on to higher education, but I felt aimless and talentless, and I had no idea what should come next. For a number of reasons, I had always been fearful of the public school systems, and so even the thought of going to a public university created a great amount of anxiety in me. My father had gone to Southwest Baptist College many years previously, and even though, at the time, I thought I could never achieve anything close to what he had, I greatly respected him, and I felt like if I was going to go anywhere, it might as well be his alma mater. And so I signed on to what by that time had become Southwest Baptist University, aka SBU. When I think of the influence of the choir's music, I instantly go to my college years and the handful of people at SBU who also identified with the creativity, vulnerability, and humility reflected in the music and message of their songs. One of those people is Jamie Harmon, who I got a chance to chat with for the first time in 30 years. I'll ask for a bit of indulgence as we first spend a few minutes chatting about how we met, and then dive into discussion on how the choir impacted each of us and the culture of Christian music at the time. Thank you for joining me.
Yes.
Jamie Harmon.
Yes.
Right? Correct?
Yes.
I keep thinking of you as Jamie Wernley.
Yeah.
Which probably happened. You probably hear that from other people who.
Yeah, I'm on my third last name now, so yeah.
Right, and yeah,
I just collect them. Yeah.
Exactly. Kind of like me, I was going by James, more or less.
Yes.
I think I was trying to make the transition to Jimmy, and it was not working, and it still doesn't work.
Called you Sting, so we didn't call you anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. Which I'd rather have that than any other name, but. Yeah, it took me a while to make that transition, especially with my family. But and now some people call me Jimmy James. They'll call
Jimmy
me
James. There you go.
But like a lot of high school and college people call me. It's insist upon. No, I'm going to call you James. You will not be Jimmy. It's like, okay,
great.
Thank you for respecting my.
Yeah. Are we supposed to call people what they want to be called nowadays?
Yeah. Well, there's all the genders. There's all the
Yeah. But
all I'm asking for is a name. Right. But
a derivation of a name.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, come on. But I was going to ask you a question because I don't remember. Do you remember when we met? I'm guessing you don't.
I do.
You do?
I do.
Okay.
Very, very clearly, actually.
Tell me how we met.
I was just telling my husband this last night.
And
because he said he asked, he's like, how did you guys meet anyway? And I said, well, it's kind of funny. That's why he got his name Sting. My friends Matt and Chad, I don't know if you remember Matt Favre, Chad Dunnigan.
Yep.
We were sitting in the cafeteria and we noticed you sitting over there by yourself eating. And we saw that a few times and we were like, hey, he looks like Sting. And I was like, yeah, so we called you Sting before we even met you. And one day we were eating and Matt's like, Sting is eating by himself again. You should go over there and introduce yourself. And I'm like, what am I supposed to say? And he's like, just say, wow, you look like Sting. And they're laughing. So as they're laughing, I got up and they were like, oh, she is not going to do it. And I did. And so this was in 91 because I came to SBU in January of 91 or February, whatever. And so it was probably around February, March. And I just came over and I sat down across from you and I said, hi, my friends and I call you Sting because you look like Sting. And you were like, cool.
I do remember that. I do. Is that all I said?
Yeah. And then we just chatted.
Well, that's all Sting would have said. So
that's it. Cool.
I didn't want to break character. No,
Plus you didn't wear deodorant. No,
I do.
Joking.
Well, it's probably true on some days, but no, I do remember you telling me that. I didn't remember the context of it at all. I do remember, and this is something that floored me that I still sometimes will when I'm having certain deep discussions with people for some reason. Mm-hmm. I'll mention this. You told me, yeah, my friends and I, we were so intimidated by you. I think you told me that.
Yes.
and yes. It was either I've had a couple of different people, well, many people over the span of the years tell me that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it just I give off a vibe that's not accurate necessarily. But you told me, yeah, we were so intimidated by you before, and I was like, so shy and so very very like nervous and very neurotic, yeah. and I'm like, why would on earth would anyone be intimidated by me?
Yeah, you didn't have that personality at all. But I think there's that aura that you had, like you're sitting by yourself, you're perfectly comfortable in that. You didn't seem.
But I wasn't.
That you felt. I know, which is good. Nobody could tell.
Yeah, good. I was faking it.
You were very enigmatic, very Sting-like.
And I don't know where Kyle was. I don't know where Glenn was.
Yeah. That doesn't make sense.
Those sons of guns left me. No, I do remember that Kyle would always arrange his classes early, or maybe late. He would arrange them. It seemed like he always arranged them, and I was eating by myself, and I hated it.
Yeah,
I hated it.
And this was lunchtime. At dinner time, I think that you
probably
were
all three of us then. But
Yeah, yeah, I feel like it was. You hung around after dinner. Actually, I think you started at the word association times that we would sit after dinner and just word associate. That was like
Oh,
my
maybe.
favorite thing.
Wow.
Oh, that was so much fun that we did word association for forever until they kicked us out, basically. But
That's right.
yeah,
I had forgotten about that. That's true, though. Yeah.
yeah, I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
But no, I really, yeah, Glenn and Kyle were always there, and you guys had your duct tape, that piece of duct tape that you moved from thing to thing in your room, that you were like, it covered a hole in the chair, and then it fixed a wire.
I don't remember. Wow, I don't remember the duct tape, but that's
Okay.
that sounds like something we would have did for sure, because we
I
did.
think it was a Glenn thing, is what I
That
remember.
probably was. There were so
Yeah.
many things. There were so many things like that, especially surrounding Glenn and the things he would do. He was a very creative soul.
Yes.
But yeah, wow. Okay, so you remember specifically? I didn't remember. I remember he hung out a lot with the group. That's what I remember. And I do, now that you mention those things, I do remember doing the word association and, you know, doing all that stuff. I remember going to see Sting.
Yeah.
Other than that, I just remember, you know, just joking around a lot.
Yeah.
Looking back, I didn't fit in very well at all. And there was a handful of people that I felt like I could relate to, you know, that were creative types and had the, you know, sort of snarky sense of humor and things like that.
Yeah. Important component.
Important. Very important. Very important. So, okay. So that was how we met. So that's why we went to a number of the choir concerts. Maybe the number is 2. Maybe it's 1. I
remember when they were at Drury. That was my first choir concert.
Okay. So here's the thing about that. Like I was thinking it was Evangel. And I was like,
maybe it was Evangel.
No. You're right.
No?
Because
okay.
I was looking, of all things, I was looking for a coaster to put my drink on in here. And I have these little coasters that look like 45 records.
Oh yeah.
But they're packed away. So I was like, okay, I'm looking in boxes like maybe an hour ago. And I found this book I have of all sorts of music things. You know, it's got Toad the Wet Sprocket stuff in it and the choir stuff in it and the Call and Altar Boys and things like that. But it had a ticket stub for the concert.
Oh,
and it was Drury. And I was like,
okay,
it was Drury, and she'll probably remember that it was Drury. And
I did remember,
I thought it was
Evangel.
I was like,
well.
Yeah, it was one of those colleges in Springfield, right?
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay, so that was your first one. Okay.
That was my first, the choir concert. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
That's what I mean. Yeah. So there was one at SBU. That might have been before you came.
There was. Oh yeah, I did not see him at SBU.
Okay, so that means we went to one choir concert together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was enough. One was enough.
Well, they just weren't as accessible as that.
No.
I'm surprised they came to SBU because I'm surprised SBU had them. I know that they had Audio Adrenaline, but that's when they opened for DC Talk. And that was pretty much as edgy as SBU got in my experience. So I was like, wow, Audio Adrenaline, that's unusual. But that was it.
Yeah,
so
the bands that were at SBU when I was there, Steve Taylor came right before I got there.
Oh, I didn't see him.
I would have loved to. I've seen him once, and I would love to have gone to that.
Yeah, he was great.
Yeah, it was the I Predict 1990 album tour, and I missed it because I came just after that.
Okay.
But other than that, the choir was there, I think, just by themselves.
Oh, interesting.
And then I think DeGarmo and Key was there.
Oh, yeah. Wayne Watson.
DC Talk actually was there.
Yeah.
In their, you know, babyish stage.
Yes, very
with
much.
The boombox
and Audio Adrenaline was not even heard of. They were their opening band.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, hey, this band is pretty cool. They might actually go somewhere. And they ended up being really hugely popular and didn't need DC Talk after that. But that was when early DC Talk. And I was kind of surprised that SBU had them because you're not supposed to dance. And I'm like, seriously? I mean, that's
I know.
You just stand there at a DC Talk concert.
Right. Oh yeah. You can do a little bit of
a little head nod.
head stuff, you know.
Maybe raise a hand, but not too
Maybe
loud.
raise Yeah, I always felt bad for the artist, you know.
Yes.
Because it's like, you know they want it so bad because they're doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I remember at the Drury concert there was a little bit. It wasn't. I wouldn't call it dancing, but
no,
it was close. It was about as close as a group of whatever Baptists. What were you?
Baptist.
Baptist.
At the time,
you grew up as Baptist too.
Yeah.
So it was about as close as a group of Baptists get to dancing.
There might have been some shoulder movement.
there was probably some shoulder movement. There was a little bit of swaying or something. I don't know. But yeah, so okay, and I think on the ticket stub it was, and I knew I'd seen him, but I had totally forgotten this. Rick Elias was with the choir.
Gosh, I don't even remember that.
He, you know who he is?
That doesn't ring a bell for me.
He was pretty obscure. He actually died. I don't remember when he died. It's been several years, maybe 10. Time flies now.
Rick Elias.
I'm like so and so died 2 years ago, and it's like no, that was 10. No, that was 8 years ago.
I know, right? That happens to me all the time nowadays. I'm like, oh, I'm such an old person. I'm like, that was just yesterday.
Yeah. My concept of time is horrible now.
Me too.
But yeah, he was there with them, and I think he opened for him. But
okay,
I don't know. I thought that was interesting. I'd totally forgotten that too. But yeah, so anyway, that's because we saw that one concert together. That's why you're here today.
Well, there you go.
You clinched it at Drury to be part of this magnificent,
yay me,
magnificent recording that a couple people will download.
I'm in on the ground floor
and listen to.
I'm amazed at listening back through, for the last few days, listening through all of their music, and it's all right there. And I was like, wow, I'll be reading through the lyrics and I'm like, not sure. And I'll click on it to listen to it. And I'm like, oh, there it is. Right there. There's the tune. And I was like, wow, this is great.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of music. I mean, I go through a ton of music and there's like pockets of time where and I was like exclusively the choir for maybe like a couple of months. And that's all I listened to. And I immersed myself in them. And so it just comes back instantly because it was so, I mean, I've listened to them throughout the years, but then like the last several years, I would say like the last few years, and my husband will say, we've been married for 10 years. I've never heard of the choir. And I'm like, really? 10 years?
Yeah.
Wow,
well, I have failed. No.
Yeah. Like, what is with me? I keep doing that. I listen to a podcast called Dissection, and Dissect. It's just called Dissect. And he goes through different albums and goes song by song.
Yeah.
And he did The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, one of my favorite albums of all time. And Derek was like, I've never heard of Lauryn Hill. I'm like, from the Fugees. And he's like, I've never heard of the Fugees. And I'm like, oh my God. Wasn't I just listening to them the other day? And he's like, not in 10 years. Again, what is this music that you... I don't know. I thought I listened to the choir a lot. I guess I didn't, but...
Well, there's so much, right?
My goodness. How many albums did they make?
I mean... Yeah, but there's that 1, 2, or 3 albums that are like, for me, are the core, and I think it's got to do with timing.
Yeah,
the college years and what's going on, and all of the emotion and all of the growing up and transitioning. Figuring things out and all that stuff. But I don't want to get ahead of myself here. So.
Stick to the notes.
my biggest fear I'm looking at my notes right now. My biggest fear was we're going to cover too much. Because there's so much. There's so much to cover, and we could go down many, many, many rabbit holes.
Yes.
of things, which would be okay. I mean, like I said, editing. Editing that I will learn how to do. But,
a 4-hour podcast cut down to 1. What?
Right. Exactly. I'm trying to get over to the right set of notes here. So, I guess, let me just ask you that first one, because I gave you this list, and so you'd have some time to think about it. So, what was your introduction to the choir? And when you had that introduction, like what drew you to them? You said you had that couple of months where it was all the choir, and so like
I had
Tell me
never
about
heard
that.
them before, and you said, I think you would like this band. And I was like,
I
I'm
said
sure I
this?
would. Yeah, you said this. And so you said, this just seems like something. So I've got tickets and we're going to go, and it's at Drury. And I was like, okay, cool. And, and I liked that idea of it. Having no idea about their music. But after that concert, I was like, now this is something, this is really significant for me. And I need to know more. And like I said, then I just kind of, which I tend to do, kind of obsessive, and just completely immersed in their music. So it was, well, Wide Eyed Wonder is my favorite album, is my favorite song. But my favorite album is, come on, taking all these notes and now I lost it. Oh, Chase the Kangaroo. I mean, Chase the Kangaroo is just, and I thought in my head, I put those together. And probably because they did a lot of the Chase the Kangaroo songs at that concert.
Yeah.
And that was the album that they focused on. But I believe they sang Wide Eyed Wonder Girl at that concert because in my mind, it was on that album, and it's not. It's on its own album. So I was like, "Where's Wide Eyed Wonder?" So those two albums.
It's on its own album that's named that.
Yeah, and I was like, "Oh, they have more than one." I thought Chase the Kangaroo was it, and they have dozens, which I was kind of surprised about. But I'm more of a collector.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So you said that you were. I'm going to paraphrase because not exactly what you said, but you said, you went to the concert. So I was surprised to hear that was your introduction, but I totally forgot. So you said you were interested, like you were like, I need to hear more of this or whatever.
Yes.
Why?
Well, for me, I think I said this, I texted you this last night, and I wanted to bring this up again today because I've really thought through this today, that phrase that I typed, and I just typed it out and then I really thought about it, that it married my beliefs to my whimsy. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is that I grew up in a really legalistic church, legalistic Baptist. I was Garb, which is extremely legalistic. I don't regret it. I don't take any, I learned a lot. I learned the Bible very well. And then I ended up at SBU. I went to a public school though, and those two things did not go together. Mm-hmm. And so what I listened to at church, what was acceptable at church was hymns. And even Amy Grant looked a little bit suspiciously at her. And so that was the very edge of what was acceptable at my church. And really not very much Amy Grant or Michael W. Smith even. I mean, they were a little bit poppy. And there was no middle ground for me. And the choir opened up this middle ground. I'm Anglican now. And Anglican is we call it the via media, the middle way. And that's kind of me. That is me to a T. I love music like Depeche Mode, Toad the Wet Sprocket, all of that. And then I like hymns and I like Christian music. And there was nothing that put those together for me that was acceptable. And the choir, it was revelatory to me. I was like, wait a minute, there's music like this that exists for people like me. This is me in song, because it has that quirky, it's not just blank statement. It's easy to understand. You know what they're saying right away. I mean, you have to really read through and feel the lyrics and understand and dive deeper. And I love that. I love that about them. It was all brand new to me. I really had never met Christians like that were not just, little polo wearing, hymn singing Christians. Not that that's a bad thing. That's all that I saw. And I couldn't put that together with my public school persona. It just didn't. I always felt like you said, I always felt like I was outside. At church, I was an outsider because I was different, that way. I wasn't that little straight line. And at school, she's the church kid. So I was not in line with a lot of stuff there either. So that was like a place where I was like, it all came together. It's a wonderful place. I'm like, I'm not alone here, So that was great for me.
That's very interesting because I had sort of, I can relate to a lot of what you said, but I had sort of the backwards of that. I went to a fundamental Christian school, all through grade school, all through high school. Yeah. And I was raised in the Baptist church. So we went to church, but it wasn't. My parents weren't super. It was Southern Baptist, which isn't real fundamental.
No.
You know,
Yeah.
they can be, but they're, you know what I mean. But my parents were not at all like that. So, and I'm the youngest of 10. So,
oh, I forgot that.
yeah, I'm the youngest of 10. So I heard all this secular music all the time.
Yeah.
But then at my school, it was like that was not acceptable. Like you could get kicked out for going to, a Striper concert or something like that, like a Christian concert. You could get kicked out if they knew about it. So I had kind of the reverse situation, and I feel like I missed out on a lot of music because of that, because I heard a lot of the secular music, but it was more the classic rock stuff. And, I just heard the, whatever new wave or alternative stuff kind of made it into the top 40.
The mainstream.
The main, which I liked. I just didn't know that other world of music was out there, like Depeche Mode, early Depeche Mode, and
early
REM,
Depeche Mode,
REM, and I mean they started in the early 80s, or maybe even 79, but I knew nothing of that, but it was a lot. It gave me more to discover later, which was nice.
Yeah.
I got it, but yeah, so it's interesting you said, because I'm kind of like the reverse, and I was introduced to the choir by Glenn, who we both went to the same school.
You went to the same school, yeah.
Yeah. And, I remember thinking how lucky he was at the time, because he lived a little further north than me. And on his radio, his stereo, he could get William Jewell. And William Jewell is a college here at quote unquote Christian college that's in Liberty, which is just north of Kansas City.
Okay.
And he could move his antenna just right to get the school station. I don't know if you remember the station in Springfield at the college. I don't remember what the name of the station was, but when we were in SVU, you could sometimes get the college station in Springfield at Missouri State. Then it was Southwest Missouri State.
Oh, okay.
But they played alternative music, and but this school, William Jewell was like that. Only it was all Christian. So they played a lot of the, Amy Grant and all that stuff as well. But there were certain DJs that they would play like the sort of alternative type stuff and the fringe stuff. So
early Newsboys.
Yeah. Well, they weren't even out then. That was before them.
That's true. Yeah.
But there was, you may not, I don't even know if you remember some Bashing the Code.
Do
you remember Bashing the Code?
Yeah, I've heard them. Yeah.
Farrell and Farrell.
Yeah.
Yeah, bands like that, and the Choir, and Daniel Amos, and the 77s. I don't know.
If those all come up on Spotify when you type in the Choir. All of those
they
come
do.
up.
Yeah. So he was forever like telling me about songs, and he was singing them to me because I could, which is something so Glenn. But he was singing them to me. Yeah, no guitar, but but he would tell me about them. And so then I would go to this Nazarene bookstore that was close by, because I grew up in the hood of Kansas City, and there was this Nazarene church with a bookstore, and somebody at that Nazarene store was hip, because they would get all these cool groups, and the Choir was one
awesome.
of them. Yeah, so that's where I went and picked this up, and so I picked up Diamonds and Rain. That was their second one. I think Voices and Shadows was their first one, but and I liked them. But then when Chase the Kangaroo came out, I remember it was my first one I ordered. I ordered it through the mail.
Oh wow!
It was the very first cassette I ever ordered through the mail, except for like when I was in junior high and like signed up for one of those Columbia House things.
Yeah, man, I loved those things.
that my brother took over from me because I was like 12.
It's a
or
lifetime
whatever. And he was like, "You can't."
Yeah.
He's like, "It's not a penny. You're gonna have to pay. You're gonna have to pay for." I was like, "Okay, I didn't realize." But he took all my music. He took all the music from me.
Oh, great.
It's like, that's not fair. But anyway, so yeah, I ordered this through the mail and got it. And I was like, as soon as I started playing it, I was like, this is something. This is something kind of like what you said. This is not cliche. It's not pandering. It's poetic. It's the lyrical content is challenging. It's not, you have to be happy.
Yes.
You have to, if you're not happy, something's wrong with your walk with the Lord. You're not
Yes. Yes.
praying, you're not or whatever. And this was like, not only was it saying you can be sad and that can be good for you if you have the right perspective, but it wasn't just saying that, but it was saying, it was, quoting the Bible,
Yes.
saying
Hmm.
that. and
Yep.
and I thought, this is because I was so used to the fakery, in my school, and you never have problems, if your
Yes.
walk with the Lord is where it should be and stuff like that. So that was, but my introduction was through Glenn, and then I, got chased the Kangaroo and knew that there was something really special, and then I just kind of never looked back. But I had thought that White Eyed Wonder was probably your favorite.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That song really, just that song in particular just grabbed me. And it's been in my head. There's a couple of songs, strangely enough, from Chase the Kangaroo, the song that has been stuck in my head my entire time for 30 years is The Rifleman.
the Rifleman, of
I,
course.
think, I don't know. My husband watches old television. He
Yeah.
loves that
So
kind
you
of
watch
stuff.
the Rifleman?
He watches The Rifleman.
There you
And
go.
he was watching it the other day, and I was in the kitchen, and I was like, whatever happened to the Rifleman? He's like, where, that's not the theme song.
That's not the
Where
theme.
does that come? And I'm like, that's the choir. I have no idea why they sang about the Rifleman. I
Yeah.
still don't know, but that's stuck in my head. So
Well, that was part of their, I had no idea what it was when I heard that song.
yeah.
I had to
Yeah.
read articles about, interviews and stuff. But I mean, it was basically like, a sort of a self-reflective look, like we're hypocritical in a way.
Yes.
Like, we say we don't want violence, you should only love.
Yeah.
And then we watch these,
Yeah.
these shows where revenge is what it's about, or, and it was just sort of a confrontation. And then during that song, they play a little clip during that song from one of their
Yes,
songs
from the
from
show.
the previous
Yeah.
album. Yeah,
Oh,
which is
okay.
called, well, they play a little clip during the song. It's
Yeah.
like I'd actually sample their own song
Yeah.
during the Rifleman.
That's great.
And it's a song from the previous album, which is called Render Love. So they're like, okay, so we're just kind of contrasting. We were singing about Render and Love, but now we're singing about this show.
But we want the Rifleman.
Yeah, we want the Rifleman. I got a job for him, right?
Set everything
So,
straight. Yeah.
exactly. Glad you mentioned that, because that's a really good example of the humility that they exhibited, and the vulnerability of saying, we got problems.
Yes.
We got things we struggle with. We're not perfect. And that was pretty, I mentioned one of my questions was, comparing their music to other Christian music at the time.
You can't.
Wow. I mean, there were some other alternative groups like the 77s and Daniel Amos and Adam Again. I don't know if you know who that is.
No, I didn't know him. I've heard of Daniel Amos and 77s just a little bit. Nothing compared to the choir.
And they were great. I love them still. I'll do talk about them on podcasts and stuff. But the choir, I mean, they were more like, they were talking about deep issues and stuff, but the choir was more like just from a very vulnerable place, and a very much like showing mercy to each other, peace and mercy and love. And, what you got mostly from the other music, was very happy, very, very praise the Lord, very, I don't know, just sort of a pushing back of all that other stuff. And I don't know, I don't want to make it sound like that they were deliberately pushing the stuff back, or there wasn't legitimacy to the other music or whatever, because I liked a lot of it, at the time. But there was definitely a very clear contrast between the choir's music and the other music. And I'm doing a lot of talking, so I'll let you comment.
No, that's good. There was a saying that went around, at least in my circles at that time, high school and late high school and early college, at the churches that I went to, that I heard my pastors, I've heard more than one pastor say this from the pulpit. They tell a story about, Bob walked up to Don and he said, "How are you doing?" And Don says, "Well, I'm pretty good under the circumstances." And Bob says, "What's a Christian doing under the circumstances?" And all of the preachers that have said that, all the people that have said that, in other words, we're saying, we are Christians supposed to rise above that. And so it's a fairly subtle way of telling you, knock it off with if you have this depressive issues, if you have, if you have questions, if you have that was not acceptable in my church. You do not have questions. Now it was in my home. My parents were very much, they were a lot like your parents. My parents were pretty much let us figure it out. They brought us to church and and it was important to them that we were in public school, and they wanted us to be able to work those things out. My sisters didn't, for the most part, really bother to, but I'm the youngest of 4. And so I watched them kind of go through their things and listen to their music. My oldest is 10 years older than me. So I had a very eclectic music going on from the very young age, but I'm the only one that really struggled with that ever. That was like, well, how do I put these two things together? How do I be a good Christian, but be real? And because if I can't be real, then I'm not really interested. And so it was really hard and my mom, it was really important to my mom that we were normal. There's a lot of mental illness in her family. Her mother, my grandmother, was very, very mentally ill. And that wasn't an acceptable thing. We don't talk about weird things. We don't act weird. We're not antisocial. We're happy. We talk about happy things. We like people to be happy with us. And so that was very much my mom's push. And I struggled with it because I was like, okay, there are days where I don't like people, don't want to be around anybody. I want to be reading. I want to be by myself. And that was not acceptable. And so I always had that idea that to be a good Christian, I had to have that face. I had to have that facade. And I'm not good at it. So I was like, it was very frustrating for me. So I tried to kind of fade into the background when I was feeling introverted, just tried to fade away and go find a corner to read. And when I was feeling like I can put on a show right now, then I was fine. But I need a lot of time alone so that I can build that up. And finally, with this music, I was able to say, okay, there are Christians that are committed Christians. It's not like, I might just give up God. It wasn't that kind of thing. It was just, I'm committed to Christ and life is really sucky, and I was like, you can say that, I'm like, I loved that. That was very freeing for me. And people that liked that music and you knew that they had that similar feeling. It was very relieving.
Are we not men? We are children of time.
Hey there, fellow Earth babies. I just wanted to take a moment to express my appreciation for all of you who have made it this far into the podcast. I know you've had to endure some weirdness and a lot of chat, but I hope that maybe there's something you can relate to on some level, because that's what it's all about. Now we go back to Jamie and I's conversation to wrap up the final segment of this first episode.
a Christian college. And I realized that it had a lot of issues and it's gotten a lot worse, but I loved it. I loved my experience there. But it was also really kind of wild for me being around Christians all day because I wasn't used to that. I was used to being at public school. We went to church all the time. We were there like 3 or 4 times a week, but that was a separate life in a way. I didn't go to school with any of my friends from church. For the most part, I had like one that I went to school with. And so it was knowing that I could have both things put together was because I loved my time at SBU, loved all my friends there, still very close to a lot of the people from there. But there was still some of that superficial, you have to keep up and I love Wayne Watson. I love his music. I loved his concert, but I'm like, I'm not Wayne Watson. I was like, I can't have, his testimony is that he doesn't have a testimony, that he grew up in a Christian home, went to a Christian school, went to a Christian college, married a Christian, never did anything wrong, never did, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's probably the truth for most of the people that are around me. So I better just be quiet. I don't want them to know, so.
Right.
That struggle being in music was great.
Yeah. I mean, it was a very transitory time, I think, for Christianity. Church in the 80s was very different.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I didn't have experiences everywhere, but it was very repressive in a lot of ways, like subtly repressive, even. Now, it sounds like your experience was a little more at church, at least, was very clearly fundamental.
Oh yeah.
But even in the churches that weren't so clear, like it was a lot of subtle, like you don't do this, you don't do that, and you knew that, and you were constantly praying for forgiveness or whatever you might have done or been thinking about doing or whatever. But so I mean that's part of the timing, that the timing of when it came out was part of that for me. It was in the middle of my college years and I was sort of transitioning, figuring things out. So you've said that Chase is your favorite.
It's my favorite album.
If you had to pick as an album.
It's my favorite album. What about you?
It's my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it'll always be my favorite just because, and I'm honest enough to realize that and say that I understand that it's my favorite because of when it came to me, the timing of everything, where I was at. Because a lot of people talk about Circle Slide. I mean, that's the one that was big in Christian music, and I think everybody kind of came on board with Circle Slide.
Yeah,
like the people that weren't on board before, they came on board with Circle Slide, and that's considered, it won all the whatever Dove Awards or whatever those things.
See, that would be hard for me to like really love that, and I'm sure it's a great album, but it would be hard for me it'd be like kind of losing something. I'd be like, oh, now everybody likes them. Okay, moving on.
Right, which is we're back to INFJ stuff again, but true. So true.
It's like, crowded up here.
Yeah, exactly. But it's the timing of it for me, my circumstances, the band. They say that's where they put it together.
Ah, okay.
In interviews and stuff like that.
I love that.
But I loved Wide-Eyed Wonder as well. When I first heard it, I was disappointed. I remember this because it was a lot more upbeat. It wasn't as gloomy sort of sounding and lyrically and stuff and musically. Mm-hmm. But it didn't take me long to fall in love with it. And I was listening to it today as I was driving, and what you said about hearing the songs, and that, like, I was like, I know like a lot of the lyrics. I just instantly know these lyrics.
Yes.
And there's a lot of interesting and beautiful songs on Wide-Eyed Wonder. You know who the Cowboy Junkies are?
I love the Cowboy
Junkies because the choir. I remember at the time I would hit all the magazines like CCM and all those magazines where they'd interview the choir and they said that's one of the bands they were listening to. And then on that album, there's a song that I think probably was influenced by the Cowboy Junkies, and it's Behind That Locked Door.
Yes.
There's a lot of harmonic, and I love that song.
Behind That Locked Door.
I cannot help but sing along with that song.
Yeah, that is great. And I was listening to that because I was like, oh yeah, I love this song, Behind That Locked Door. And so I did some research, and George Harrison, that's George Harrison for the Beatles in 1970. He
I
released it in
think,
1970.
you know what? Now that you say that, I think I did know that at one point.
Yeah,
Like I
I was
remember
kind
reading
of,
that. I forgot that.
and I love that when you can find, I really kind of revel in, I can find a Christian band doing a song that from a secular person.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that, because I'm
Yeah.
like, behind that locked door, George Harrison didn't mean anything spiritual by it, but in the hands of the choir, it is. It's very, so
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I love this so much. That, yeah, that's great. That's a great song.
What other notes do you have? Yeah.
Well,
You have quite a few.
I have notes on Someone to Hold On To. I love the lyrics of Someone to Hold On To. And I was like, I listened to the intro over and over and over today, because I'm like, there's something that's reminding me of something else. And so I was like, I'm feeling like maybe In Excess, Tear Us Apart. Maybe that's what it is. So I listened to
Maybe.
that.
Oh yeah, maybe.
I listened to that and I'm like, it's close, but that's not it. I feel like it's something around that era. Maybe it's an REM song. So sure enough, I listened to REM, The One I Love. And that opening chord is the same as the opening chord to Someone to Hold On To. But in the choir, strangely, well, not REM was a pretty dark, depressive, they didn't get happy, shiny, happy people making fun of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, they
Right.
they didn't do the happy, but the choir took that same chord and did it more up tempo with a different beat to it, but it's the exact same chord. And I was like, that's why it sounds so familiar. And I just love how they did that, where they pulled in, REM before they became really popular and known. They were more of the underground scene, and I really loved them. And so I was like, oh, I love that. And they did it. It's a love song, but a love song like the choir would do. So it's not your sugary sweet, and I just loved that connection.
There's a hint of darkness there.
Yes.
Or foreboding or whatever.
And even pulling in God, because I need someone higher than the stars. And I'm like, oh, see, they just did that so well, so seamlessly. You could.
Very much so.
Yeah. So I love that.
Yeah, and it's funny you said that, because I was listening, I was thinking, I was contrasting the two, which I don't know why I've never done this in my head, but the two albums, Chase the Kangaroo and Wide-Eyed Wonder, I was like, just I guess I was trying to figure out, why do I feel a certain way about one and a certain way about another, and I was like, it's more jangle pop or jangle type music, and it reminds me of REM, like the music on Wide-Eyed Wonder. A lot of it reminds me of that. And then Chase the Kangaroo is more moody, and I don't know who it's like. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't think there's a lot of comparison. I mean, maybe a little bit of Midnight Oil, but maybe a lot less rocky,
Yeah, it's a lot. It's very moody and ambient.
Yes.
A lot of they had ambient on both of them, I think. They did some ambient.
Well, that's their sound. I mean, I think I could hear them anywhere and I'd be like, hey, that's the choir,
Yeah. So Chase the Kangaroo. So did you listen to it again? Did you, or did you think,
I listened to it.
What do you feel like is the theme of the album? Like, what's your opinion on that? Because it's very personal, I think, to interpret, and that's what we love about this kind of music, right?
Yeah.
The band could mean one thing,
Exactly.
It could have different meanings for different people in the band.
Yeah.
And certainly for listeners, it's going to sort of strike different things. But what was your overall?
Well, I went to the title track after I went through a bunch of the other songs, and I went back to the title track, and I was like, it sounds so silly. Chase the Kangaroo. I mean, what is that supposed to mean? And so I just typed out some of the, and it says, Jesus buried diamonds in a land where love is rare to find. Shovel go deep, heart be true, chase the kangaroo. So I was like, okay, for me, that means we're supposed to go deeper. It's not, I mean, God created all these things, but most of us just take the shallow. We take, what's easily accessible. And as you mature, you're willing to go deeper than that. And I think that the depth is what's missing in a lot of today's Christianity. In today's churches, I think there's like zero depth. It's like you can dip and you're done, and I'm like, I think that's, and sadly, I think that's what was missing in a lot of my upbringing too, that as long as you had the surface right, then nobody really cared about the depth. And I really think for me, the theme of Chase the Kangaroo, the whole album, is be willing to go down the different path to get to what God is trying to show you, what he's trying to bring to you. Be willing to get rid of that saccharine, shallow surface and dig deeper to find the true treasure. And be willing to be weird. And like I said, that wasn't acceptable in my house. It was definitely not acceptable at my church. And
Yeah.
I mean, they were appalled that I went to SBU, because those
wow.
Southern Baptists are radical. I mean, it was that extreme, you know, and I'm like, oh my word. But finally being able to be like, you know what? I do think differently. I do have different thoughts about this. And there are other people that do that too. And you can find more meaning. And I like all of their songs. The Children of Time is, I love this trio of lines. The devil enlightens the children of time. The devil entices the children of time. The devil endorses the children of time. I love that. I'm like, that is so indicative of today's world. You know, I mean, that's exactly what's happening. And we just take the easy route. We really do. Even in Christian circles, we take the easy route. And that's not what we're called to do. And it's not easy to do the opposite, because you can be ostracized by the world very easily, but you can really be ostracized by Christian circles just as easily. And that's very sad to me. And I feel like that's what they're singing about on here. It's like, go ahead and do it anyway, because that's what we're supposed to do. Get off the beaten path.
Yeah, I have a couple notes, like, you know, about both of those songs that you mentioned. Men, women, people,
mankind.
You know, they tip mankind, you know, view the truth of life through human scientific knowledge. I mean, that's how we are wired, because our mental ability to understand the truth, it becomes hopelessly entangled in what we are able to comprehend through human discovery, you know, at any particular time in history.
Yeah.
And we're limited in that. And so it's, you know, the children of time, we're almost slaves to that in a way.
Sure. Yeah.
Not just children. True worship is discovered in the struggles and the pain of life. You're kind of left with a lot of things that happen in life that you can't reason through.
Yes.
You know, but we're kind of designed to where we want to be able to, right? We want to be able to understand everything. That's one of the biggest things that I've lashed out against in Christianity. You think you have to understand it all. You want to basically make yourself into God and understand it all. And yeah, we should strive to understand things, absolutely, and learn and mature, but you also have to understand that God is sovereign, and you're not going to ever understand everything that there is to be understood. But those were some of my notes on that one. And then on the other one, you mentioned digging, and I have notes about digging and Chase the Kangaroo. And what sparkles to our eyes is not where the true treasure is. The treasure and the inspiration of the Holy Ghost is happening beyond and outside of our senses. So we have to dig and keep digging to gain just a little more understanding of that which will likely always be just beyond our reach in this life. You know, we're going to keep digging. Yeah. We're going to get part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
God's going to let us have, you know, some of it to inspire us, to keep us going, but there's always going to be more to dig for.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I just had those comments. And since
a verse
mentioned
that bothered me since I was a child was working out. You were probably exactly the same way. I was one of those kids that, I mean, I took notes on all the sermons, and then I had questions for the pastor, and I was always thinking through everything, and people are like, why can't you just like color, like, you know, I mean,
yeah.
You know, and I'm like, I have this, no, and I don't understand how this goes together. Can you explain it to me? You know, the pastor's like, isn't that cute? Aren't you 9? You know, I mean, it's, you know, and I wanted to, but this verse that struck me as a young child, I mean, elementary school, was working out our salvation with fear and trembling. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? And I'm like, I wrote it down, and I was like, I questioned the pastor after. I'm like, what does that mean? And he's like, well, you don't need to worry about that. And I'm like, but I am worried about it. I'm like, I need to know. Yeah. So I asked my parents, and they basically said the same thing. That's like kind of beyond what you can understand. That has stuck in my craw my entire life. And as a Baptist, it doesn't go with our theology. You don't work out your salvation. You said a prayer, you are covered. That is it. One and done. And it has always rankled me. And like I said, I've gone through a ridiculous amount of denominations, and so has my husband. And ironically, separately, we went through several of this separately. but we've been, since I married him, he was a minister when we got married, and he was Methodist. And then we became Presbyterian. Then we went to non-denominational / Assembly of God, kind of, sort of. And now we're Anglican, and he's becoming.
You have been all over.
Huh? Yeah.
You have
and
been
that's not including Lutheran, Catholicism, and Baptist, which we all were. I mean, we're very much, Anglican is basically Catholic with a small c. We're just a step down. And it's interesting that in more of the liturgical churches that we've been in, that verse does not bother them, because that's what it is. It's the relationship. You work out that relationship throughout life. And I was like, well, then how do some people say that it's just done when I said a prayer when I was 6 years old? That doesn't make me comfortable. Like that worries me that I'm missing something here that I should have been working on this entire time, not just doing Bible drills, and which are good and valuable. I know the Bible, but I need to know deeper than that. What does this mean? And so I do love that. I love that you have to dig deeper. It's not a shallow, empty, easy thing. It's just not. Yeah. It's not.
Yeah. And that appeals to people like us too, and our personality types,
Yeah. I don't like easy.
No. We don't like to do things the easy way.
No, definitely not.
Well, how about that, folks? Shovel go deep, heart be true, chase the kangaroo. There's a whole lot of things that sparkle in this world, a whole lot of things that pull us towards them. Try to keep in mind, true treasure often lies in understanding each other and ourselves, because only then can we show true mercy and love to each other. And that's what life is really all about. That brings us to a close for this episode, part 1 of The Choir. Yes, there's going to be a part 2. There was just too much good dialogue with Jamie and I didn't want to make this episode too awfully long. It's my first episode. I'm still learning. Thanks for being patient with me. Please check back in soon. Jamie and I will finish up our conversation, and I hope to have a little bit of something else for you folks. So please check back, and I will try to make it worth your time. You can find a list of attributions in the show notes, covering our intro music, our outro music, and all of the sound transitions I used between segments. Until next time, fellow Earth babies, keep on digging to the heart of mercy and love. This is Jimmy James signing off. Take care now.